Alright folks, so when we left off, things were looking pretty grim for the Allies. They had just lost the Battle of Dieppe, they lost the battle in Hong Kong, but towards the end of the war we start to see things turn around for them. Now the first time that happens is in the Normandy campaign. Now if you remember from the Battle of Dieppe, the Allies lost the element of surprise, and that was ultimately their downfall because the Germans knew exactly what they were going to do. But in this case, the Germans knew that they would be attacking, but they didn't know when. And they didn't know where. So what the Allies did was they fooled them into thinking they were going to attack at a place called Calais. And how they did that was they set up a bunch of tanks and stuff, making it look like they were preparing for an attack in Britain across the channel from Calais. So the Germans are seeing it right there in France because it's occupied, and they're going, oh, well, they're going to attack over here because they're setting up over there. But it was a fake out. So June 6, 1944, they didn't attack Calais, they attacked Normandy, which is a province of France, at 5 different beaches. Now, this operation was called Operation Overlord, and what they did was they nicknamed these 5 beaches. So the Canadian forces were in charge of a beach that they had called Juno. Now, so they invaded, and the Canadian troops actually got the farthest inland of all of the Allied troops who attacked that day. So ultimately, this campaign was much more successful than the Battle of Dieppe. The losses were significantly less, and they made really good progress into France. So after that, what I've done here is instead of explaining every event in detail, I've just created kind of a timeline. So hopefully this makes sense chronologically and geographically. So this is 1944, then they're fighting in France and they're fighting all over the continent. So February 8th, 1945, the Germans are successfully driven out of the Netherlands. Now, if you think about the map of Europe in your head, so they get through France, then they get through the Netherlands, and so the Germans are then driven back further east into northern Germany. So they're back where they started. So the Allies are making really, really good progress here. Now, so they're still continuing to fight right there in Germany. They regain control of France, all these amazing things happening, until finally, April 30th, the Soviet forces enter Berlin. So Hitler at this point sees, the Allies, they're in Berlin, right? That's pretty much as far as you can get. And he's like, okay, well, I'm not going to come out of this well or alive, so he kills himself because he recognizes that the Germans are going to be defeated. Now, they continue to fight, but you'll notice not for very long this time. So just a few days later, there's a ceasefire declared. And then 2 days after that, the Germans surrender unconditionally. So no more fighting, no more war in Europe. And so this day was declared VE Day, which stands for Victory in Europe. So that meant that the war in Europe was completely over, and the Allies had won. So even though Germany had surrendered on May 7th, Japan, remember they're still in the war, they continued to fight after that. So Germany's defeated, but Japan's still going strong. And by this point, they had occupied many countries, much of China, the Philippines, other places in the Pacific area. And because the thing is, the Allies were so focused on Europe and taking down Germany that's where all their forces were, that's where all their resources were. So there were Allies stationed in Southeast Asia trying to stop Japanese invasions, but they didn't really have much success, as we learned, until the US entered the war in 1941 after Pearl Harbor. So Japan's still going strong, they haven't been retaliated against as much until US President Harry Truman, who's president at the time, decided, we're going to end the war in Japan altogether by dropping some atomic bombs. Now, these aren't regular bombs. These are very, very destructive, using nuclear power to do their damage. So August 6th, the first bomb is dropped on Hiroshima. Now, this bomb kills over 90,000 people instantly. Just by the sheer force of the drop of the bomb, 90,000 people gone. That's not even including people who died later because of burns from the bomb, or people who died because of cancer from the nuclear energy of the bomb. Like, just from the sheer force of the bomb dropping, 90,000 people. So these are very, very destructive. So after that, it seemed like Japan was going to continue fighting. So 3 days later, he dropped a second bomb on Nagasaki. This time, only 74,000 people killed. Not quite as successful as the first one. So after that, Japan's realizing they're just going to keep dropping these bombs until the entire country's dead. So on August 14th, the Allies requested an unconditional surrender from Japan, which they accepted. So Japan surrendered unconditionally. August 14th, World War II ended.